enough. Well, we are halfway through the show, and we are going to delve into our first but not our last visit to PJ Harvey. And interestingly enough, and we'll run this stuff down in a second, this is PJ Harvey when they are a group as opposed to just a human, but PJ Harvey is also a human. So interesting duality that we'll talk about in a second. But first, in the montage, I believe I put Dress in the montage, and now you'll hear Sheila Nagig. Okay, Matt, go ahead and give me the numbers for PJ Harvey's debut album.
Dry. Yeah, Dry by PJ Harvey comes in number 238 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums. Excuse me, number 19 in 1992, number 1,285 of all time. It's PJ Harvey's fifth highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind a slew of other records we're probably going to cover, including Rid of Me, To Bring You My Love, Stories from the City, Stories from the Sea, and Let England Shake.
I believe we're going to cover all of them, yes.
Nice. This Dry was not in Rolling Stone's list, and PJ Harvey is ranked, just missing 102 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Okay, so 10 albums for PJ Harvey if we're talking about the singer herself, Polly Jean Harvey, if we want to go formal. And there are 2 albums where PJ Harvey is a trio as well as a person. So this is the first of those 2. Rid of Me after this would be there as well. So first they were formed as the PJ Harvey Trio, and then later just became PJ Harvey. And that is both person and band for those 2 albums. And she just kept the name, because it's her name, afterwards.
She's like Sade.
A little bit, yeah. There's other examples of that, kind of.
Van Halen.
Well, no, you probably should stop there, Matt. Just let me kind of keep going on. So, okay, so the other members of the group, in case you're wondering, initially it was going to be Rob Ellis and Ian Oliver, who Polly Jean, we'll just go with Polly Jean when we're going back and forth between the 2, had played with before. But Oliver left pretty quickly after sort of the band was formed to join another band. I think the name was Automatic Diamini was the band, and he was replaced by Steve Vaughan, who is here on the album. So that's kind of what the 3 pieces are right now. We'll talk about Polly Jean first. She's born October 9th, 1969 in Bridport, Dorset, England. I don't know enough about English geography to know exactly what each of the comma demarcated things are. I'm guessing it's the equivalent of like a region and a county, as we would have in the States here, in the colonies, if you will. But obviously, one of the big things that comes up when you learn about her is that it was a farm. And so her parents were artistic types, to say the least. I believe her father was a quarryman, which is a job you don't hear too many people having these days. Yeah. And mom was a musician as well. So there's sort of like, I won't say it's a bohemian lifestyle, but it was bohemian adjacent, I think. It was a lot of when you see stories or read about her, she kind of was left on her own to explore her creative muse a little bit. Famously, she creates personas, sort of like David Bowie does, but there is a level of androgyny with her, too, that she mentions quite a bit. She's famously private in terms of interviews. She shares a little bit in common with someone like Kate Bush in that she's only going to give you exactly what you want, but also she's got a little bit of Bowie in that she sort of rejects labels. There's other folks that she ties into. She is another one of these women that would not take on the feminist lens, pretty famously, saying that kind of she doesn't identify with being branched into like one specific area. So she was playing in bands all throughout her teenage years. And during this time, she just met a bunch of musicians who sort of cultivated her sound. She began writing songs herself. There was always an element of her. She's a very talented sculptor, and she wrote poetry, so she was in all the artistic lanes. She basically moves away from this consortium of musicians she's playing with, and that's when she decides to form her own band. As I mentioned before, she brought people along the way. There's another gentleman here called John Parrish, who she's sometimes referred to as her musical soulmate. He would co-produce a lot of these albums, so he sort of continued to be not a muse, but a hand behind the throne a little bit for her, someone she could sort of run stuff by, I think. And so he is involved with this as well. They chose to go with PJ Harvey Trio. She says it's because nothing felt right at all besides that name, or just suggested that it would have the wrong type of sound. I don't 100% know what that means, because I don't know what the name PJ Harvey evokes as a specific sound you're looking for, but go for it. And the band starts playing live together, and there's a couple different things where they recount that their shows did not go well early. And there's one anecdote that comes up quite a bit, that they're playing at a show and there's about 50 people there, and they clear out the hall. There's only about 2 people left. And then a woman just walks up to the stage, one of the few people there, and shouts to the band, "Don't you realize nobody likes you? We'll pay you. You could stop playing. We'll still pay you." So the band just stopped playing. So at this point, they relocate to London. I think PJ Harvey herself, Polly Jean in this case, thinks she might study sculpture, but they do record a set of demo songs, and the song Dress gets picked up by the independent label Too Pure, and they decide to sign both her and the band. And it gets on to English radio, which I felt like it was easier, like if you were sort of a niche act, to get on English radio, if just somebody liked you. A lot of times it's like John Peel or somebody just grabs you and says, "I like what this is like." And not surprisingly, John Peel himself is one of the people playing this along the way. It becomes the single of the week in Melody Maker. And John Peel, as I just mentioned, was the guest reviewer who raves about the song. And then Sheila and the Gig comes out. It's the second single. It does well in England. And then Dry is released. And it is, PJ Harvey in general is pretty much beloved by critics. Most of her albums, in the 90s and 2000s and early 2010s, you'll see on best of lists along the way. So she is a real critic favorite. And Kurt Cobain actually listed this album as his 16th favorite album ever in that Journals list that he made. And she got a lot of things. She was Rolling Stone's Songwriter of the Year and Best New Female Songwriter. Ended up on top 10 in most lists. Pretty much all the critics you'd know sort of love this one. And this led to the group. There was a bidding war for them, and they actually ended up signing a major label deal. And for the second time this episode, Steve Albini is brought in, because he's who's brought in to produce the album after this. But we will talk about that down the road. Around the same time, too, a version of Highway 61 Revisited, Matt, was done there. So if you want to hear
by PJ Harvey?
Yep, Highway cool. 61 Revisit with the members, it's there. So there's a lot we can talk about with PJ Harvey. Very interesting woman, and group in general, group dynamics. We'll weave it in future episodes. I don't get the feeling you guys are as familiar with PJ Harvey as I am, so this might be, in some of your cases, maybe the first listen. Josh, we'll start with you, because I think you told me that was the case for you.
Yes, this is a first listen. I'm not familiar with her at all, and I'm happy that we talked about her, because this is a great album. I feel like it's everything I want in a guitar rock album, and kind of follows this lineage of women-fronted guitar rock that I really like. The person that really came to mind most, even though their sound isn't exactly the same as Karen O and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, I feel like there's a little kind of DNA that links the two of them in either like attitude or kind of delivery, vocal delivery. But yeah, this album is kind of like, it's a little moody, it's a little dark. I really like the guitar throughout the album. I like the addition of the violin at times too on songs like Dress and Plants and Rags. Almost every track has something that I really liked about it. Oh Stella has a nice guitar. That's the second track. The Dress has a great beat. Victory, Happy and Bleeding. She's a really interesting lyric writer as well on songs like that. She's kind of subversive in her own way, I think. I know you said she rejects the feminist label, but there's definitely
yep. Well, and this album's named Dry for exactly the reason you'd think it's been named Dry.
Yeah, she's commenting on things that, women, think and feel, I would imagine. And so I think this, Sheila and a Gig is a great single song for me. Hair, really, I have nothing bad to say about this album. I really liked all of the songs, and I'm excited to listen to her other albums. I feel like this is kind of bordering on an elite album for me. It's kind of the same way I felt when we listened to Sinead O'Connor. I was just really thrown off and pleasantly surprised, and felt like it was a big discovery for me. I'm really high on this album. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say about it as well.
Go ahead, Matt.
So, I know a little bit more PJ Harvey than you might think. I am familiar with Let England Shake, which was in the early 2000s, I think.
2011, I think.
Or 2011,
right?
God. All the 2000s, they're all the same, guys.
Yeah.
And I can say I like that album quite a bit. And it's one of those things that's interesting. I'm thinking about this now. I've known that album for so many years. I got it the year that it came out. I don't remember why I did. There was not it's not like anybody was like, hey, you got to check this out. I never really had a PJ Harvey head in my inner circle that was like, yo, you got to check this out. I don't know. I just got it, and I really liked it. And you would have thought that would have meant, shoot, I got to get more. I got to learn more. I got to get more into this, and I just never did. Right. This album is awesome. This album is what a debut. I mean, this is a debut album. You got to be kidding me. This is a fully formed sound with very interesting things going on. It's a straight ahead. It's more of a straight ahead rock album. I think that she kind of goes in different directions for sure. Definitely Let England Shake is a different sounding album. And it even inspired me to I saw that she's got a new album out that came out last year, and I listened to that, and it sounds very different than this. It's much more muted and not as energetic, but very interesting nonetheless. I just love everything about this. I love the vibe. This got a great opening track. Oh My Lover is a great opening track. It's got really great chord progressions. It goes in directions that are a little bit non-traditional, but they're still not this kind of overbearing or unpleasant sound. It's not jarring. It's also it fits well within what she's doing. And then in that song, you think you know what's happening, and then the way that she sings at the end as it builds, she's got this vocal part that just kind of takes it in even a deeper level. Like she's doing some more interesting things there, of introducing them for the first time. That it's just like, holy crap, what a great song, and it just goes from there. I thought that the first 6 songs, there's 11 songs on here. The first 6 from Oh My Lover through Sheila and a Gig were all tip-top songs for me. And then you've got Hair, Joe, and Plants and Rags, which I liked very much, but probably just a tick below the other ones. But it finishes really strongly with Fountain, and in particular Water is a great ending track. There's just really cool guitar parts happening. There's intricate little weirder sounds that are, I don't like whether it's a violin or whether it's I don't know some of the other instruments that they're using, but it's a very interesting record. She's got a great voice. It reminds me a lot of Sleater-Kinney. That was kind of a touch point that I was hearing here. There's a couple songs in here. I'm like, man, this is definitely a Sleater-Kinney vibe.
Definitely
I know
an influence on Sleater-Kinney.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, it's palpable. And I know you had mentioned John, you posted it because I didn't think about this, but the Kings of Leon Molly's Chambers,
Oh,
very
for
sounding
sure.
similar to Dress. And
That
I was
ripped
like,
the whole riff off.
I didn't think of that either. And then I heard, I was like, oh yeah, I totally see what you're saying there, you know? So, this is she's great. She's fantastic. And actually, I am like I was telling Cherry about, you know, it's like, oh, PJ, this album's great. She goes, well, you should go see her. She's doing a tour in the fall, and she's coming around here in September. So I'm like, all right, I think I'm gonna go see PJ Harvey now because she's probably not gonna. I would love it if she did this entire record, but she's obviously probably not. But the fact that this is the 5th highest rated on Best Ever, there's 4 albums that are better than this supposedly. Oh, we're in for a treat. This is like kind of rediscovery. This is like on the same level as like Talking Heads level of excitement, because knowing the artist is there already, but not really knowing a whole lot about them. But like just, you know, with Talking Heads, every album that we hit, I was like, wow, that was great, you know. And and I am excited for, I think what I'm going to get of more of the same. So yeah, this is excellent. Big thumbs up for me.
Well, and spoiler alert, guys, there are albums better than this one, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So PJ Harvey's one of those acts that is in the John canon, where people who know me, there's certain artists they associate with me because I mentioned that I like them, and they're not necessarily on the mainstream. I mean, Sonic Youth we've talked about quite a bit, My Bloody Valentine. There's just certain groups that I've always liked that just people that know me know I love them, and PJ Harvey's definitely in it. They're one of the few like critical darling acts. I could be somewhat, you know, jokey and cynical about it and stuff. This was the one that never I made jokes about, because like I got it from the beginning. I remember the first time I heard, I think Rid of Me was the first PJ Harvey I heard. I was relatively young, but there was just something about the sound that I got it immediately. She was weaned on the blues. She mentions Robert Johnson a lot. She loves the Stones and stuff. And there is a bluesy element to these early PJ Harvey albums, especially this one. This is a very, like you said, Matt, later she's not as definitively a rock act like this. She sort of drives rather some trip hop. There's some, you know, folk. There's just different stuff that comes in. But this is a rock
experimental
album. Experimental, yep, just different stuff like that. But this is a rock album. It's interesting because it's very feminine in some ways in its sensibility, and it's very aggressive in a way that doesn't track feminine in other ways, and it's overtly sexual from the title all the way down to the content, but not. It's interesting. It's not explicit outside of maybe the title, but it sounds explicit because of the way she sings, and there's just something about her that just, I mean, she later even names an album like Is This Desire, right? And that's a perfect title for a PJ Harvey album, because she's a very visual artist for me too. She makes a lot of very interesting videos, and she alternates between these personas, but she also alternates between traditional views of beauty. Like she'll often be wearing, I mean, she has a song on this album called Dress, right? About when you put on a dress and what it means in so many different ways. But if you see her perform, there will be times where she's very stripped down, and I'm not going to say ugly, but like she consciously chooses an aesthetic that plays down her looks, right? Almost going for that like Patti Smith type look, you know. And then there's times where she'll put on makeup and wear this like very sexy dress or like boots and stuff, and you're like, wow, like what a, you know, like a goddess, you know what I mean, on this. And she veers between all of these different personas. So she's a very fascinating visual artist for me. I think what always brings me to the tent with PJ Harvey is just the emotion that she evokes in her music for me. She just has that it factor where I'm interested in what she's doing at all times. Like there's just, she seems to exist outside of the zeitgeist, but also her albums always fit with when she releases them. And I think that's such an incredible talent that musicians don't really have very often. And I don't even really know how to fully explain it, because if you said, where's this album from? You could say 92, but you could also say later in the 90s, right? Because like you said, Matt, there's a lot of like Slater-Kinney who is releasing it. Yeah. She exists in a weird thing where she's just got all the elements where she could exist somewhat in the mainstream, but you can immediately tell that she's missing something that would make her popular beyond like a subgroup of listeners. And so you almost feel like she's kind of like your secret to some degree if you're into her. And as a result, she's got very dedicated fans because she can walk the line of, enough to do the Reading Festival, like semi-headline there, but also feel like she's your secret act that no one else knows about. And the guitar on this album is excellent. It's dirty, bluesy at times. It fits well into the alternative rock of the time as well. But I would definitely say it's like blues derived rock along the way. It's moody music. You never 1,000% are sure what angle she's taking on what she's saying, and you could kind of project in whatever you want out of it, which is a trait of her lyrics, I think, because they seem so deeply personal, but she always claims that they are not autobiographical, with a few exceptions. I don't know if I totally believe that. My guess is she would probably say the autobiographical part is the feelings, not so much the literal thing. She's got a lot of quotes when you research her that she's like, people take me so seriously and literally they think I'm like a witch or, these different things. And she kind of, but, once again, it's kind of like when you actively cultivate a mysterious persona and then you say people don't really get me, it's kind of, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because, it's like part of it is I think there's a little bit of you that's going for that, So, but yeah, this is a strong thumbs up. This is close to an elite album for me. And it's probably been about 5 years since I last listened to this. I've listened to this album many times in my life. And as I'm listening to it, I'm just like, wow, this is just such a good album. And I think Matt and Josh are both going to like it. But I also was thinking, and this isn't even like the best of her. The best is still to come. And so it just kind of made me chuckle a little bit. I'm like, yep, this is going to be, and that's what I was thinking. I was like, I think Matt and Josh, this is going to be another one of these like grower acts where as they listen to more of it, they might appreciate it. So, and I do want to say, she does owe a little bit of, her lineage. We mentioned the blues and we mentioned stuff, but she definitely comes from a singer-songwriter tradition of like a Kate Bush too, because she's English and she's experimental and you feel deeply connected to her while also she's somewhat unknowable, which is that's for whatever reason, I don't know what it says about me, but that's a trait of female artist that I really enjoy. So so
yeah, I probably should have. I would have done well to like pick up this record in 1993 and like maybe listen to this instead of the Soul Asylum as much as I did. Like that's what I'm
fighting.
like
You for the Soul Asylum.
No, I'm not blaming. I'm just saying
it's
just like other bands and stuff that I never would have thought of listening to. Right, that just is just resonating so much more. Like I've for as many times I listened to Grave Dancers Union, I don't think I ever felt once about that record the way I felt about this record the first time I heard it.
Yeah.
Like right off the bat, I was like, all right, this is awesome. Like different level.
I'm so lucky. I had siblings of friends of mine plus 3 college radio stations near me that I could just tune into to do it. I stumbled into stuff. Luckily, I didn't get everything, and there's still stuff we're, doing here that I stumbled to. But like the fact I got some of this early, Matt, I do consider myself lucky because it was very helpful in forming the taste of my music earlier than maybe it would have been if I hadn't had those outlets.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, great discovery. I enjoyed it.
Yep.